Justin felt tired and looked above. An endless display of intertwining branches and trees waited for his eyes. The trail was more difficult than he imagined. He came to the hills of Kentucky to clear his mind, but the view of the unending trail was twisted enough to make his mind all jumbled up again. It was his first time going on any hiking trail at all. His newly jobless life in Dayton, Ohio made it unbearable for him to breathe around people anymore. He decided to clear his mind and find a new job afterwards. His blurred-out mind was only thinking of tiring himself and eventually getting a clearer view. His non-habitual body was now tired, and he wanted to go back. He looked around while sipping from his bottle. He wiped off the sweat from his forehead. "I should better get in some shape once I go back," he thought to himself. "Well, I must head home first," he mumbled and turned. It took him a few moments to realize that somehow that was not the way he came. He tried to fix his direction, but the trees looked all the same, and the leaf-covered ground had no clue for Justin. Justin was lost amid the thick clustered trees of the Kentucky hills. The birds were signaling to each other, but their voice was silenced. The sudden fear of abandonment took hold of him. His breath was now losing the rhythm of an average person. Calm down, Justin. You just have to remember the path you came here on." He tried to keep himself in his senses. Every attempt to keep him composed was turned into a fit of anxiety and panic. He tried to run and make out of something of the direction in the hilly forest. He began to run without thinking and got himself more confused within the forest. He was now running totally opposite to the way he came. His perplexed senses made him get lost deeper into the hills. With feet running in no direction, he noticed that the sun was now trying to move down from the sky. He was bumping into trees, but there was nowhere to go out of the hills. He felt a presence deep in the hilly trees. Something was watching him. It can't be. He tried to shrug the thought, but now there was certainly something that was chasing him in those thick trees. Justin thought it might have been some wolf or bear. "I must be careful in case a person jumps out of the trees." He was looking at the trees where he thought he heard something, but there was nothing. Justin stopped for a second to catch his breath. The next thing he knew was a sharp pain. He couldn't find the cause of the sudden blow. He felt that his brain had turned into ice, and he fell from the boulder he was standing on. The impact was huge, and the fall made its stamp on Justin. A trip meant to clear his head took an unexpected turn, as Justin found himself in a dire situation. He came to with the dragging force exerted on him, and his ankle was hurting immensely. He felt the slow pushing movement and the rough edges of the hilly ground on his body. His stretched out arms were collecting debris along the way and mixing it with a tint of blood that was seeping through minor cuts and wounds. His eyes were blurry and showed him a moving view of the branches above. Patches of dull blue sky in between those branches were telling him that a lot of time had passed since he last saw the sky. The next thing that made him open his eyes was the agonizing pain he felt at the back of his head when he was dragged by something. His hand went to his head and returned with a dismal display of scarlet agony. He tried hard to focus and open his eyes to see the blood on his hands when he saw the creature that was dragging him slowly by the ankle. A pair of two huge legs covered with fur that camouflaged the hilly background of the area was in front of him. As he tried to figure out the creature, he felt the strong grip of his hard hand on his ankle. The upper body of the creature was also covered with the same fur, but it was not a bear. Bears do not walk like humans on two legs, as it was walking while dragging Justin by his leg. That was not the time to think how or when he ended up there, but only the thought of saving his life. Justin realized that it was not a dream, and that the situation was grimmer than he could have ever thought. His pain-drenched head was unable to distinguish reality from fiction. The clenched hand of the creature was telling him the reality, that Justin was prey, and the predator was looking for somewhere to hide it or finish him off to soothe its hunger. The movement stopped. and the creature dropped his leg when they reached a little rocky cliff. He looked at the big round head of the creature that was looking at something below. At that moment, Justin decided to believe the fiction if he were to save his life. He reached out to his pocket silently, but felt dismayed when he found his cell phone was crushed, probably when he fell down the boulder he was sitting on before the creature hit him. The creature had long nails near to claws, and he was looking down cautiously while crouching down. Justin tilted his head downwards silently. He saw a small cabin, might have been built by some hunters or rangers to monitor the area. A thought crossed his head that they might have some weapons with them. No wonder the Bigfoot-like creature was so absorbed by the scene. He might have only one shot to save his life, and Justin decided to take it. He gathered all his courage and strength in his legs and looked at the way down. It was not easy, but he had no choice. He sprinted off, jumped downwards on the trail with slippery soil, and almost rolled down to the cabin's door. The creature let out a roar and followed him, and he looked at its face. It looked like a mixture of humans, wolves, and a bear. The fall broke Justin's foot, and he crawled to the cabin. The raging creature was coming down and was about to tear him to pieces. Justin pulled himself into the cabin and locked the door. He dropped whatever came to his hands before the door. "Help! Help me!" he yelled, but his dried-out voice was not answered by anyone, as the cabin was empty. The pain was making him dizzy, and the angry roars of a hungry creature were piercing his soul. He felt what a prey could have felt. The scratching of nails on the cabin door was decreasing the possibility of escaping. Bigfoot was as huge as a bear, and the door might not stand for long. At that moment, Justin heard 2 shots, one after another, and the grunting of the creature with an angry roar. The scratching stopped and was followed by another round of shots. Human voices were heard, and Justin called for help again. The rangers unlocked the door, came to his rescue before he passed out, and later woke up in a hospital with a story to tell.